Great to see you, Wendy.
Thank you. Good to see you too, David.
Today I'm here with Dr. Wendy Wright, who's an integral part of our PhD program here in Oblate School of Theology. And maybe, Wendy, you could start by explaining a little bit about what you do here at Oblate.
Well, I am technically an affiliate faculty,
Okay.
which means that I offer a doctoral course every year, and I also have worked in the master's program, especially online, and work with doctoral students as well, which has been a delight. I'm actually emeritus faculty from Creighton University,
Okay.
but had the fortune, really, of being identified as somebody who works in the field of spirituality, and I've really enjoyed being with the doctoral and MA programs here.
Yeah, we've enjoyed having you.
Yeah.
You were on my committee, which was a choice, actually, that I got to choose who was on my committee. Then it was an honor to have you on my committee. So how long have you been affiliated with the program here?
I'm not sure I can actually answer that.
Okay. 10-ish years? 3 years?
Closer to, I've been retired now for 7 years.
Okay.
But I actually started connecting with Oblate maybe 3 or 4 years before that. So it's probably been a decade. Yeah.
Wow. So, of course, the program here is very specifically about academic spirituality. I know every time we talk about what is spirituality, there's so many different definitions, and would love to just hear, when you think about academic spirituality, how would you kind of give that some general definition?
I suppose I would say that unlike other studies of religion, religious studies, a sociology of religion, a philosophy of religion, spirituality really focuses on the rather insistent and almost universal, really, human longing to be connected to that which is ultimate. And so the study of spirituality is the study of that bringing together of all the different capacities of the persons or communities into a life lived in relation to and in response to however you consider ultimacy. Clearly, this is a program in Christian spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And so the context is very specifically Christian, but not denominationally. This is a Roman Catholic institution, but it's a very ecumenical program.
Mm-hmm.
So we have students doing, work in not only the historic traditions of Christian spirituality, but also contemporary questions and across the denominational spectrum. So it's kind of wonderful, that way.
So I really like that definition. So there's two things that maybe you could expand on. You
Yeah.
talk a little bit about there's a desire, that desire is an integral part of this work.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds very relational. So it seems that this field would be much more confessional than just kind of a clinical outward study. Is there a faith element to this? You're really talking about relationship with humans and divine.
Yes.
So there's something more personal there. There's something more.
Yes. The study of spirituality tends to be what I describe as a self-implicating. In other words, yes, one's own experience, one's own resonance with the longing of the human heart, if I could put it that way, is part of it. It's not a cold and detached thing. I wouldn't use the word confessional in the sense that although people identify with particular faith confessions, they're not siloed here. In other words, we're not recapitulating all of the old kind of conflicts that go on between the different Christian groups and stuff like that. We're trying to find obviously we want to be really careful about acknowledging, if you're working with a figure from the evangelical tradition, or you're working with figure from the Roman Catholic tradition, as a good scholar, you want to acknowledge that in your work, and you may have an identification with those. But it's a broader search, I think, for human meaning that involves a consciousness of what Thomas Merton called the hidden ground of love. That there is something in our lives that is the beginning, the end, the origin, the telos of our lives that is greater than us. And the exploration of that is both specific. In other words, it's careful about, we're good scholars about, identifying theological and historical boundaries or, identities or whatever. But I think at root, my sense is that people are drawn to the study of spirituality because of their sense of that deeper human longing to be connected to, however they understand, that which is basically ineffable and unchartable and unknowable, that we make our little attempts to do that, and we take seriously the human search for meaning and its various varieties. But I think there's always an open-ended and respectful quality that I experience in people who do the study of spirituality. That would be.
So this idea of human meaning and desire to understand that is not new, Christ. That's been around for humans' existence.
Yeah.
But the study of academic spirituality is fairly new. So why now? What brings this to the forefront of theological studies? Why are people asking these questions now in a way that they haven't before, at least academically?
Well, that's an interesting question. In terms of theological studies, which tend to be very tradition specific, there's still many theological schools that are teaching the specifics of particular denominations and groups and that kind of thing. Religious studies has a longer history, several hundred years old at this point, or at least 100 years old, if not more, in which different people from different traditions were asking, or from different disciplines, academic disciplines, asking about what is this religion thing? Is it all, a kind of made up thing? Is it a human projection? Is it something universal? Is it, what are the qualities of it? What is religion? And so from a long time, there's been these quests with sociologists, anthropologists, philosophers, linguistics people, and that kind of thing, to think about religion. The way religious studies has developed, and a lot of what you find on campuses, university campuses in the United States, is a religious studies approach, which is wonderful. I mean, because people learn about different religions and from different, disciplinary perspectives. But it tends to be a little more standoffish. And no one does scholarship that's completely, neutral. But at the same time, there's a carefulness about not inserting in any way one's own kind of perspectives. America is also a place where there have been all these sort of revivals of different kinds. And I think that the interest in spirituality, and then it's coming into the academy, is part of a longer, late 20th century response to a number of things. So growing interest in America in religious kind of things or spiritual kind of questions, as well as the Second Vatican Council, Roman Catholic Second Vatican Council, which opened up a whole treasure trove of historic Western Christian traditions that were pretty much siloed in Roman Catholicism. And the more general interest in spiritual practices. How do you read the Bible? What does it mean? How do you pray? How do you, what kind of ascetic or disciplines of life do you engage in? And there's this huge treasure trove from the West, not only in Roman Catholicism, but also in many of the Protestant traditions as well, that people suddenly were interested in again, and interested in thinking about both on the ground, pastorally, but particularly people who were, studying these things. And I remember at the very beginning of what, for me, it was the beginning of the study of spirituality. I was in a religious studies department. I had gone to move on and do a doctorate, but I chose one that was an interdisciplinary doctorate with religious studies, French, and history because of what I wanted to work on. And at that time, my interests were not just in biography or the history of ideas or something like that, but in the actual lived experience of, in my case, these two persons, Francis de Sales and Jane de Chantal, how she, in her relationship with him, as he is her spiritual director, and she was, then they worked together and they founded a religious community. But what was it that in the relationship and in his advice and in her then growing sense of who she was in relation to God, how that worked out. So it was about the kind of interiority of, in this case, spiritual friendship or spiritual guidance, and that was something different than just doing, a sort of biography of somebody. And at that time, my major professor, who was in religious studies but had an incredibly sensitive sense of what I was doing, was asked to be part of a seminar at the American Academy of Religion, started by Bradley Hansen, who was a Lutheran scholar, pastor. And my mentor said, "Oh no, you want my student." So I got to go to this seminar at the AAR when I was still working on my dissertation and present some of my work as well, and discover a whole group of people who were also interested in pursuing the study of the spiritual quest within the its many forms and its many varieties and its modulations and nuances and all that, but somehow that was at the core of all these people's interest. And yet they were also really well-trained scholars. They were historians, they were theologians, they were they had all the scripture scholars, but they wanted to push into it in a different way. And so I think a lot was happening last part of the 20th and into the 21st century that both allowed that to be possible, and now it actually, after a lot of work on a lot of people's part, it became an accepted discipline within at least an interdisciplinary field within the study of religion. Although I think the term still is very casually used in many ways that mean nothing. So.
Right.
That's another thing.
Well, and part of what I hear you saying is you're talking a lot about the inner life.
Oh yeah.
Right, and I think where religious studies might look at religions and behaviors and more external, as you're saying, there's an inner life here that's being looked at in study of spirituality, the lived experience as engaged in that personal, intimate space. And there's a lot of definition given to that in this field,
Yes.
right? Of what's happening in someone's inner life and their experience and how they perceive their relationship with the divine, with other people, that feeds into that whole sense of the search for meaning.
Yes.
Right.
Although I would not say that the entire study of spirituality is about the inner life.
Right.
It involves the inner life. And from that, though, how you articulate and how you express that inner life in concrete actions, in relationships, in the work you do, in the way you move in the world, and in the kind of dynamic desire to move into the world in a way that hopefully changes the world too. So there's a strong, you can study it a lot of ways, but it's not just enough to study somebody's prayer life.
Right.
It's the whole person too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this is an important conversation for what's happening in Christianity as a whole. So we see a lot of anti-institutionalism. We see a lot of kind of post-Christian desire. People are interested, and you hear a lot today, the spiritual but not religious. Can you speak to maybe what contributions can the academic study of spirituality have in this contemporary Christian space where there's a lot of questions about religion? Is there value that could be added from the work that's being done in this field to that conversation?
Yes. I would say that one of the maybe not so salutary dimensions of them, I'm spiritual but not religious, is the sometimes expressed attitude that, anything that has to do with institutional religion, that's just, we really want just the pure spirit.
Right.
But part of the thing is that all great religious traditions have treasure troves of practices, of perceptions, of forms of prayer, of ways of moving into the divine, or into the ultimate, however you want to think about it, that are tried and true, and or can be appropriated, or you can learn from them. I guess what I find kind of perplexing is the idea that you think, so you're 25 or 30 years old and you're going to make it up from the beginning.
Correct.
I mean, not that there isn't wonderful innovation. I mean, I have 3 wonderful young adult, they're not young anymore, and grandchildren too. And I appreciate all the wonderful new things that people can bring. But human wisdom is not just make it up as it goes along. And I think there's an enormous amount of wisdom that we can access, and that the study of spirituality does it well, because it's not proselytizing. It's not trying to say, this is the way it has to happen, or this is the way that God means it to be, or something like that. It's a much more generous kind of approach to the study of religion and the study of the human spirit, it seems to me, and a lot of humility in it too. I hope that we're in this together, and what can we learn, and what is it that comes through the core of these traditions? Now you do have to sort out a lot of stuff that you if it's not just a question of go become a Roman Catholic, or go become a Methodist, or go become a evangelical, and you get it all together, or something like that. But that we're all in this together, but we have rich wisdom in the Christian traditions that can be shared, that can be appropriated, that can enliven our lives. And it's not something that just got made up.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing to me, is that tradition can be ossifying, it can be stultifying, it can be an artifact, but tradition can also be the great wisdom of those who have worked with this stuff and refined it and written about it and lived it in a way that really is quite astonishing. You know, there's so many figures who have lived these luminous lives that come from their own deeper search for meaning within their particular context and time and place. But that's something I wouldn't want to lose. And I think the study of spirituality does give us access to a huge amount of human wisdom in the search for meaning.
That's actually one of the things that drew me to the program, was the ability to come and draw life from others that have walked the great cloud of witnesses.
Yeah.
And it is life-giving. It's inspiring to be able to do that and look at 2,000 years of Christian tradition and all those that have gone before us and what we can draw from them. Maybe a good way to kind of bring this interview up, or at least in for a landing, would be to talk about the work specifically done here.
Okay.
So, you know, we've had 20 or so PhD students now who have gone through the program. I know you've directed a number of those dissertations. So with all this breadth and width and life that can come out of the study of spirituality, maybe you could share a couple specifics. What are some of the details of some of the work being done here? How are people applying this study to their own dissertations, to the kind of research work that they're doing? Could you maybe give us a couple examples?
Yeah. Well, one of the nice things about Oblates is it's a very international doctoral student body, and some of the people who come are, for instance, from Kenya or from Vietnam, and they come from religious congregations that really are hungry for understanding the depth of the kind of Christian life from a a larger perspective. And so I have one student from Kenya who is working on the question of Marian devotion and thinking about the violence against women in Kenya, and trying to, it's much too complicated to try to, do the argument, but that somehow the contemporary lack of respect for and the dignity of particularly women and that's true worldwide, but in her case there. And somehow, how can, in a Kenyan context, some deeper understanding of and practice of and enculturation of Marian devotion, not just bringing it from Europe, but what does that mean to enculturate that? And how does that interact with the questions of the human dignity of actual women? That's one interesting one. Another one is a student from, Burkina Faso, who is working on the work of Madeleine Delbrel. She was a French, middle of the 20th century French woman who was a lay woman, but nevertheless went into the streets and encountered the other. She worked primarily in the middle of the 20th century in a strongly communist zone in France, and her witness was there, and she talks about her own deep faith practice, but in relationship to the ordinary people of the streets. That's a wonderful one. I had a student from Vietnam who, because her congregation was founded from France a long time ago, at the end of the 17th century, but because of the history of Vietnam and the complexity of the French relationship with that, they knew nothing about their founder or the original spirituality, although they do wonderful work all over Vietnam. And she actually did a whole research on her founder, Pierre Lambert de la Motte. Yeah, and again, it was an interesting example because unlike a lot of religious congregations that were part of the colonial enterprise, this was not a bunch of French people going over and, becoming, or nuns going over there and doing that. They were all indigenous members of this congregation. So that's another fascinating one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all fascinating. They're all different. They're not all international. There are people who are working on more contemporary issues across the denominational spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate your time. It's really nice to talk with you, and thank you for all that you've done for the program here and your ongoing involvement.
Thank you. I appreciate it too. Appreciate your work here too.
Thank you.